how best we should move forward in regards to the CBC. Thank you so much, Susan, for joining us. We already know that the task force is already going around counties, getting views from Kenyans on how best the CBC can be improved. I know they'll be working for 6 months. So what should Kenyans be expecting at the end of the 6 months?
All right, thank you, Grace. First and foremost, it is clear the president had already said that there is no way they are going to scrap off the CBC. But the task force, I think it's well enabled. And if they're able to do the work they are required to do, because first of all, they are required to check the CBC in regards to the government policies and the nation's policy. They are also meant to work on how to restructure it and make implementation easier. They're also meant to work on how to make the implementation work and also deal with the ambiguity and ineffectiveness and even people being not sure. And also the task force is meant to deal with how resources are meant to be managed and also how to just make it work for the schools and also the teachers. And also they're meant to work on the pre-service and in-service training because it was clear that teachers felt that there was no proper training for CBC. And therefore the task force is meant to work on it. And in regards to higher education, the task force is meant to work on financing higher education, because we know the CBC, the structure is focusing on higher education more for the 3 years senior school, and also after senior school, the tertiary or people who want to go to university. So it will work on, or it will look into financing higher education, look at the help, for example, how it's working, restructure it, and it also look at how to make open universities where people can learn, and also the open distance and e-learning, which is the ODEL. They're working to see, the task force is meant to see how this can operate. And if it's done well, I'm sure it can work, because I won't say it's too late to scrap off, but I think we already are aware that chances of scrapping are not working. But if all those can work, the implementation, the resource management, encouraging the ODEL, learning, and also pre-service and in-service training, it can work. Because CBC, just like a child having teething problems, a child needs preparation. I think that's where we had a problem. But if the task force is the team that is there, that is deployed, I'm sure that it's a team that can work. If they're able to deliver, then we will be fine with the CBC.
Mm-hmm. Now, Susan, there are complaints from parents that they are being engaged at this stage and concerns that they weren't engaged at the initial stages when the CBC task for the Ministry of Education was coming up with the CBC. What are your thoughts on this?
All right, curriculum implementation and curriculum change happens for different reasons. All right, so when this reason, they came in and said we need to change the curriculum, it's not a problem, but it seems like that some stages were skipped. So for example, the stage of involving the stakeholders. Well, there were interviews that were carried out for students. Some teachers were involved in the interviews, but parents are a key stakeholders in implementing the child's curriculum. But so far, CBC feels like it's the parents' work, because homeworks are given, homeworks that teachers are not able to do, the child is not able to do, is the parent who's being involved. Parental involvement is becoming too much. Well, it's not bad to have parents involved in their children's education, like it can be encouraged, but when it's now overused or exhausted, it feels like the parents are drained, especially in the involvement. But I also feel the parents were not informed. They were not educated on what to expect on CBC. But if the reforms are made, if the task force that has been given this work, the mandate to work on it, and they work on it the way it should be, curriculum process involves educating people, the stakeholders especially, and involving them. So curriculum change is a step. So you come up with the ideas and it has to be addressing a certain need. So if parents are involved and informed on what to expect, I feel that's an area where parents were not very much involved. But if the task force is able to work on it, then we will be fine.
There have been mixed reactions from parents. Of course, you've already answered a bit of it. Mixed reactions from on the implementation of the CBC. Do you think there's anything the Ministry of Education could have done to kind of ease Kenyans into the new curriculum? Because for some, they saw it as a shock. There's a new change in curriculum, no engagement from the parents or the teachers. What could the Ministry of Education have done?
All right. CBC was very enticing. The promises it was giving, competency-based, a lot of subject areas for children to feel involved in, and also saying that we shall now have continuous assessment instead of exam-based assessments, and it was very good. But now the problem is it feels like we were not ready in terms of resources, because I remember when we were in school, we will do home science and art and all those subjects. And still, at no point it felt like parents were being requested to bring things constantly in school. I feel like that's an area the government should work on. And also in terms of providing resources, because there is a curriculum. So this is what needs to be implemented. So by the beginning of every academic year, or even in the long term, they know, for example, grade 6, this is needed for grade 6. All right, children will be learning this concept. So what is it as a government or as the Ministry of Education can we do to provide the resources to implement? Because if you give a curriculum and you don't provide the resources, it's becoming a burden to the parents. So I would wish the government can foresee what is needed and provide the resources. As much as we know they might not provide like 100%, but at least try to meet parents, especially with this economy. So that I feel it's a burden. So if we can have resources, especially given to the education sector, especially primary education. There's so much to learn. CBC has a lot to learn, but the resources need to be there. And also the government should ease the burden on the parents especially. Yes.
Susan, you've mentioned on home science. Previously, home science, art and craft, music was in 844. So what informed the decision to scrap it off and then now again reintroduce some of those subjects as practical lessons in CBC?
All right, it's a bit interesting that they scrap it off but still use it. But also curriculum change has a bit of different dynamics. You can choose to delete, to add, or to review some of the things. So curriculum change is about that. You can choose to delete, add, or review some of the things. It's not bad that they are still introducing them, but it is sad that at some point it felt like they were dropped in especially primary schools. So it felt like they were dropped and now we are picking them back. But curriculum change involves different dynamics. Sometimes you can change, you can review it, you can scrap some things. So I feel like they're just implementing what we already have in a new name, but also CBC has new additions. Like for example, at a senior level, students are given an opportunity to explore their talents at the 3 different categories where you can choose to do the art sciences or the social sciences or the STEM. So it's a good opportunity for them, but also, curriculum involves different ways. You can choose to change, review, or delete some of the things. So I feel like CBC is very good if the resources are given and if people are well informed about it, but
It's common knowledge that public schools in the country face a challenge in regards to learner and teacher ratio. With the activities that usually are in the CBC, there is a challenge that the teachers are not able to meet the students or learners' needs because the learners, you can find a class has 60, 70 learners, and the activities in that particular lesson is more involving to the teacher. So what do you think the government can do in order to sort this challenge?
I think teacher ratio is not a challenge now that there is CBC. Teacher ratio has been there for quite some time, especially when we started the free primary and free secondary education. Teacher ratio became, because the enrollment rate increased for like between 2003 and 2017, the enrollment rate increased by 40%. So when there was increase in enrollment rate, I think the government was also not very well prepared on how to cater for this new enrollment. So teacher ratio is not a problem with CBC. It has been a problem there initially, but also it's not, teacher ratio is different in different parts of the country. especially the urban areas, teacher ratio is not a major problem as compared to rural areas. And also the rural areas is also depending on the different areas. Some areas like where there was and the arid areas, I think the teacher ratio is a bit lower compared to the urban. With employment, at least TSC has tried to employ at least 8 out of 10 teachers, or out of 10 classes needed for especially primary and secondary schools in urban areas. And also we have the implementation of especially the BOGs working in schools, and also the government had started the contract-based employment for teachers and interns, and it actually took very many teachers in the internship program, which helped reduce the teacher ratio. But teacher ratio essentially is a problem we've had for long, not just in CBC. But well, as you said, CBC is becoming, because of the activities and all that, teacher ratio is key. So it's an area that I would wish the committee works on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Still on matters to do with like public schools, primary and secondary schools, there is a problem of inadequate or good, well-structured infrastructure in the schools that it poses a hindrance to implementation of the CBC. Moving forward, we don't know whether there is a few chances that the CBC will be scrapped off. More chances are that they're going to try and improve on how it's implemented. Do you think that working on the infrastructure is one way that the CBC can be improved, its implementation?
I think that's a definite yes. We have a long way to go as a country in terms of infrastructure, especially for public schools. And it's most in the urban areas, we still have a long way to go if we are to work with the CBC, because there was an incident where people were learning how to swim. Most of the public schools don't have swimming pools. So there's a long way we need to go. And I think that's an area where the people who came up with the curriculum had not looked into. It is okay for our learners to learn these skills, and especially the physical skills and also the sciences they're learning, but we still have a long way. In my opinion, the government needs to work on especially structures, because like now, if ICT, for example, ICT is to be implemented across all levels of education, the different pre-primary and the lower secondary is to be implemented. Some schools don't have electricity, some schools don't even have access to the internet. So I feel like the government still has a lot to do. The Ministry of Education has a long way to go, and I'm hoping the committee will come with such reforms and also suggestions on way to improve this. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Susan, you're the expert here. Should the homeworks that learners are given to go home with, should they be that parent engaging? Should, you see there are a lot of memes going around that learners are told to go and cook, and then they bring the food to the teachers in school. So how essentially should the homework for the learners be? Should it be based on their age, or perhaps the teachers are giving them beyond what the learners can handle?
First of all, it's not a teacher problem, the homework that they are giving. The teachers, remember, are guided by a certain, if it's the lesson plan, you're guided by it. And the lesson plan, when you're making the lesson plan, you're guided by the curriculum. So even now the CBC books that come in, they are directed. This is what you teach, this is what you give home for homework. So again, it's not more of a teacher problem, it's more of the curriculum need to be worked on, because the teacher just does what is guided. So also there's a problem of teachers haven't been trained very well on the CBC, and also who trained the teachers? The universities. So when the universities are not involved in the training of these teachers, you realize these teachers go to the field or go to the job market without the knowledge for CBC. And that's the biggest problem we have, the in-service and the pre-service training. So the teachers don't know how well to implement. So they're given that and they're given to give it. So on the homework, I feel like because it's the learner, being a parent and a teacher at the same time, the learner should be guided on what to do. The work of the parent should be also guiding the learner on how to go about it, not actually doing it. But some of the homework, it actually feels like it's a parent who's doing it. So that's an area I think the task force or the trainers who be given the opportunity to train our teachers, they should look into. And also KICD, when they are coming up with the different materials, the resources, it's an area they should work on. Just assess if this work is for a 4-year-old, is a 4-year-old be able to do it? Because again, the different dynamics in families are different. Some parents are not available. So you find the children are the ones who are suffering in the sense that my homework is never done. So the teacher thinks you never do your homework because you're indisciplined. So that's an area the KICD especially, because they come with the resources, should look into. And also the schools. If you're giving homework, assess it in a way that is the child able to do it with minimal guidance. Of course, I'm not saying with no guidance, minimal guidance, because also parents need to be involved in their child's education, even if it's not 100%, yes.
There have been concerns from parents that grade 6 learners are too young to join their counterparts in secondary schools. Moving forward, they are expected to join next year, I believe. So what can the government do to ensure that these learners, perhaps there are no incidents of increased cases of bullying or harassment? Because remember, they're 11 or 12 years and they're joining their counterparts who are 17, 16, 15. So what can the government do even as they join junior secondary school?
On the joining of junior secondary school, in my opinion, I would actually wish they do their junior secondary school in their initial primary schools. And my reason is this. We already have these classes that are there, the grade 7 and 8, that are already available. First of all, we already have a shortage of resources. So why waste other resources while trying to create a new room for the junior secondary while you left the classes in the primary? Because I don't think at any point that those classes will be filled because they are already available. So I don't think they'll be used immediately or with immediate effect. So I feel like the students should remain in their initial primary schools. And also, at the age of 16, and we have high schoolers who are at the age of 18, I feel like it's a big gap for them. And also it will be a big leap, especially for the grade 6. Some of them are very tiny. Some of them, physically, they're tiny and also their age. An 11-year-old working with a 17-year-old, because high schoolers are 17, 18, and even some even 20. So I feel like it will bring us back to the bullying, initial bullying that was there in high schools, and also it will give trauma to some of the kids, and especially if we are now to make them travel distances. It will bring a burden to the parents, and also might cause trauma to students, in my opinion.
Finally, if you are given a moment to speak with the committee chair, or what advice would you give the 42-member task force in regards to the implementation of the CBC?
First of all, I trust the committee led by Professor Raphael. I feel like they are well able, but I would just, what I would wish to tell them is they need to look into the implementation of the curriculum and resources, and more so look at how they will train teachers in this CBC, because teachers feel like they were thrown in the deep end and you're meant to deal with something you're not sure. It feels like things are moving so fast. They were thrown in the deep end. So I would wish they work on how to make teachers more comfortable, provide the training resources, provide frequent training, and also stop talking about the teachers. There's a time they were suggesting teachers should go to school more oftenly, but also see on how should go back to school and do the trainings, but also should see how to do the teacher training, provide resources, and the trainings should be done by experts, not from different levels, and also involve the universities and colleges and the tertiary levels for teacher training, because those are the people who will come to the market in a few years. So what is it do you want them to learn? So if they're involved at that level, then it will be easier to have people who are ready, they are market ready, so that they are able to deliver what is required of them.
That was Susan Njeri. Thank you so much for coming. That was Susan Njeri, an expert on curriculum studies, and we've gotten a chance to dissect matters to do with the competency-based curriculum. Let's now take our second break here on Hope TV News Watch. We'll be back with more stories. Don't go away.